Hey guys, Shar Pittman here, your host for Woman of Purpose podcast. I just want to welcome you guys to this special edition of our podcast. And with me, I have Samantha. She is our community manager. And then Amy, she is our producer. And Esteban, behind the cameras over there, he's our director. And we just wanted to do this, just this little short special to just kind of recap 2022 and some of the cool episodes that we had in 2022, and then just touch a little bit on 2023, season 2 coming up here in probably, a month or so. We're going to start recording actually next week, and then we'll be getting some of those episodes out. But how this all started was, what was it, May 2022?
Yeah, the very beginning of May, I would say.
The beginning of May, I was, it just was one of those things. I felt like I was actually praying, and I felt like the Lord said to do a podcast. And I remember thinking, I don't even listen to podcasts, and I came to church, or I came to the office that day, and I was talking to Esteban, and I said, I know this sounds crazy. I said, but I feel like I should do a podcast. And Esteban got so excited, and he's just like, let's do it. And I'm like, I don't even know how to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But it really has been amazing. It's been amazing for me because not only just the guests that I've had on and some of the topics that we got to talk about, but some of the people that it's touched,
Yeah.
And so that's just some of the things we want to talk about. So we're going to just recap some of the episodes that we did in 2022, and for you guys are usually behind the camera whenever we're doing the recording and stuff like that. So what are some things that maybe stood out to you guys standing behind the camera?
Well, I don't know where to start. I will say that it's so cool to sit behind the camera and be able to just see and have the first look at what people are saying, and for being the community manager, it's really great because then I can be like, that impacted me, so that's probably going to impact somebody else. Or I mean, and there's funny moments too. There are things, that just happen, or people say between takes, and then we just have to refocus. So that's always super fun.
Yeah, we always say the in between takes, after the after show type thing, is really the funnest. And maybe
Really.
we should next season, we should really record some of those and put
I
those
think so.
out after that, because some of those are,
Mhm.
almost as
Yeah.
good, if not better, than the actual
Yeah.
recording.
I do want to say there was one of our guests. I think it was the one with Aaron. She was talking about her situation and just the hopelessness, and how she kind of went from hopelessness to hope. And there's some situations in my life that I was just kind of feeling hopeless about in that moment. And she started talking about it. I actually was crying. I was like, don't make any noise. But I was crying because it was so good what she was saying. It was so relatable. And I was like, people need to hear her story.
Yeah.
So that was my experience behind the camera.
Yeah.
Not just with Aaron, but also some of the things Wendy was saying.
Yeah.
I was like, wow.
And that was just like having, free therapy, right?
Yeah, right.
With Wendy,
That's true. If you want free therapy, just hire a therapist to be on your podcast.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I think a lot of just even the title of the podcast, with Woman of Purpose, and I love all the guests that you have been able to have on, is that they really were women that you use the word empowering a lot. You don't necessarily want to encourage people, but you do this to empower women to walk in their true identity.
Yep.
And I feel like just watching each one of these women that have been on the podcast throughout this last season, that's what I felt during and after every single one. I felt like, okay, you said, we're going to walk through this hopelessness. We're going to overcome our insecurities. We're going to overcome all this kind of stuff. We're going to light bulb moments of codependency or childhood trauma where you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't realize, but now I do. So, but it doesn't just keep you there. It always helps empower you to do something with your life. So I've felt a lot just getting to listen and be a part of it and hear these different women, how they have overcome, and hear the dynamic between just the talking and how it just has influenced their lives and everyone's lives to be that woman of purpose.
Yeah. And that's always been my heart. Identity is huge for me because I've learned I had to come through a season of really realizing that I believed a lie about myself, and then learning that, I can actually live my true identity. And so identity is really a powerful thing in my life. And I want women to understand that too, and to go from encouraging women to empowering women and women.
Definitely.
It's like a whole nother level, because if I encourage you, then it's like I'm always trying to pump you up. But if I empower you, I'm actually giving you the tools to do it. And that when you realize that you can do it, then there's this thing that comes over you that you really truly can live an empowering life. And so some of the topics that we talked about was living a healthy lifestyle with Brittany. That one was really good. She talked about just the difference of diets and nutrition. She talked about bad food and the issues that we have with guilt and shame with food attached to it, and the eating disorder. Who would have thought that a nutritionist, somebody who is big on nutrition, had an eating disorder? But her bravery just to be able to come and just talk about that just really unlocked in a lot of women that were struggling in secret and isolation with eating disorders, were able to come out and actually hear that, oh my gosh, I'm not alone. And have the tools to be able to overcome that.
Yep. I love how she said too, even during that, it's like your relationship with even food, it doesn't even necessarily have to be something bad for you. It was like, even if you eat the right foods for the wrong reasons, there's still something going on inside your heart. So it was like there's this emotional attachment where where freedom had to be had. So that was really eye-opening too, really good.
Yeah, definitely. It's kind of like, it's like there's no necessarily bad food. It's just food that maybe isn't, what'd she say, isn't nutritionally dense for your body. So it's like, well, why would you eat food that your body isn't gonna like? I mean, when you put it like that, it's so
you're like,
it takes away the whole like good food versus bad food, and there's none of this like, oh, I ate so good today, so then I can have a little cheat. No, you don't.
You don't think that way.
You don't think like that anymore.
And I'm excited because Brittany, we're going to do another episode with Brittany in season 2 on nutrition, and then just kind of a whole different take on nutrition, because I'm realizing that how the things that we eat really affect our not only our body, but affect our spirit and our soul. And so I'm super excited to get into that in season 2 with Brittany. And so we did an episode of overcoming anxiety, fear, and worry. That was with my friend that was visiting from Argentina, Kim Angulo, and that one really, it was interesting. On this one, we did it. We talked about hope. We talked about our perception of things. But I was at a farmer's market after this episode was released, and a gal come up to me and she said, "Shar, I just want to tell you," she said, "my daughter, who lives in Seattle, Washington, listened to your podcast on fear and anxiety. And she said that she had been struggling so terrible with this that she was, going to the doctor. She didn't know. It was just overcoming her, overtaking her mind. And after she listened to the podcast, it was like she felt so free."
Wow.
So I was like, even for just the one, that, I mean, I know who she is, but I hadn't seen her in many, many years because she's lived away for so long. So that was, it just was like, okay, this is why we do what we do, so that was really powerful. And then we talked about, one of my favorite ones was with Becky Melton and Wendy Muska, when we talked about healthy emotions. For women, emotions, are really a big thing, right? Because women's emotions are like all over the place. And so Becky and Wendy are some of my favorite humans because they're really funny.
They are funny.
Cramp.
Yeah. So that was a really good. And we talked about how emotions are indicators, and we have the ability to manage our emotions, and we can control them. I hear that a lot dealing with women. I deal with women on a regular basis, and it's just like, I can't control myself. And the reality and the truth is you can control yourself.
You can. One of the things Becky said was like, if you can control yourself when you walk into church or the supermarket and not be mad at everybody, You know what I mean? And then you get in the car and you're like yelling at your spouse or you're yelling at your kids. It's like, no, you can control them.
Absolutely.
You know what I mean?
Yes, I do. And all the emotions have a purpose. They're not
Mhm.
good or bad. They're just emotions.
Right.
And that's really huge because our emotions indicate to us what's going on inside of us. And it's not so that we can explode at people, but so that we can be aware and say, okay, why am I frustrated? Why am I mad? Why did
where
that
did this come from?
Yeah, where did this come from? Why did my spouse make me so mad? And a lot of times it's not that our spouse made us mad or somebody made us mad, but that maybe mad is just in us. And we got to figure out why it's there so that we can experience the good emotions. And sometimes we've suppressed, maybe growing up as children, as I was, we were not really allowed to have emotions.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're not allowed to be angry or to be mad or whatever. It was so then you suppress all of them. And when you suppress the bad, you have a hard time experiencing the good.
Yeah.
And so you can't have one without the other. And so it's
Right.
learning how to manage all of our emotions, not be
Right.
overly dramatic with things. And, women are
Right.
never over dramatic. That's why I've got my no drama llama mug
No
right here.
drama.
But women are no drama, right?
Yeah.
Never.
Yeah. But
So-
I love that how it's so important to be able to express your emotions in a healthy way.
Yeah.
So because like you said, we don't want to suppress this stuff. We want to be able to
Right.
express it. So I love how they did just through the talking, they really helped like, okay, how do I come to that conclusion of, well, maybe I'm not really angry, maybe I am afraid of something, or maybe
Right.
I'm sad about something, and that expressed as anger. So it's like really trying to figure that out. How can I get that across in a nice way, but yet still validating that I do have this feeling.
Yeah.
So
Right.
let's figure that out.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of the things Wendy said was that anger is often masked as it's really hurt, like you're really just hurt about something.
Truth. Yeah.
So
It's really true. And because we can't say that we were hurt, or if somebody did hurt my feelings, it's like we don't feel like we can go and say something about the
Right.
hurt. And maybe you don't need to say something to them about the hurt, but at least express it so that you can get it out and deal with it. I think the number one thing is actually dealing with, acknowledging
yeah.
our emotions, and then deal with it.
Yes.
Right. Don't just sit in it.
Don't just sit in
Poop or
it.
get off the pot.
Exactly. That's a good one. Deal with the emotion, acknowledge it, and then deal with it. That's super important, because a lot of times women maybe will acknowledge their emotions but not deal with it. And so that was a good one too. Some of the stories that we had on was we had Aaron's story, which was so amazing. I remember asking Aaron to be on my podcast, and she's just like, oh my gosh, but testimonies are so powerful when you see somebody and you see them, what they went through and then how they came out of it is super important and powerful, because there's people that go through things and you feel so alone and isolated in that. And when you hear a testimony of somebody like Aaron, who went through some really, crazy things with peer pressure and identity and not knowing who she was and feeling insecure and not, worthy, and all the bad relationships she was in, and how her feeling worthless and all of those things brought her into making really bad decisions and in bad relationships and all of those things, and how she really was set free.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, really set free.
Like she said that, like, even like if there was like a song that would remind her of like an old boyfriend or something, like the Lord has like taken those memories away from her, which is just, that's so supernatural. I've never even heard of that. That's so cool.
Yeah, it's really, really cool.
Yeah. I love that too, because, we value so much that being authentic and real, and these ladies like being so vulnerable to share their stories, but that authenticity is what really does. People can so relate to that. And then that is what can help bring healing to their life. Say, okay, if they were able to overcome this, I can do it too.
Yeah.
So that authenticity and that just being vulnerable like that has more impact on people than we know.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love how she, she owned her choices.
Right.
She didn't blame them on, she talked about that, didn't blame them on, childhood or parents'
Mhm.
things or
Right.
anything like that, even if some of those did attribute to that,
Right.
because she made it very clear that her choices were her choices.
Yeah.
And that she had to own those. And in order for her to be free, that's what she had to, stop blaming others and to really do the work to be free and to give hope to especially young ladies in college to be able to be free and to be brave and forgiving self.
Yeah.
Forgiving
Yeah.
self, because that's a really huge one, is that sometimes it's easier for us to forgive somebody else than to
Mhm.
forgive ourselves. And the
Right.
reality is that we actually can't move on until we forgive ourselves.
Mhm.
Right.
And sometimes I think women stay stuck because of maybe their past and things that they've done. And it's just like, we live with the self-affliction type thing
Yes.
because we feel like we need to beat ourselves up because we were so
Right.
terrible.
Yeah.
Like how, I made so many bad
Yeah.
choices. I
It's
shouldn't
like,
have done
yeah,
that.
it's our repayment for what
Yeah.
we did, the decisions we made.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the reality is that we can't go back. We
Yeah.
can't change the past.
We just need to let our past self be
Yep.
our past self.
Yep.
Like we don't stop trying to put what you know now into who you were in the past.
Yeah.
I know.
Because you're not that person.
Are we so
anymore.
thankful
I'm
that we're
so
not the same
thankful
people?
I'm not
like,
the same
oh, thank you,
person. Oh my
Jesus.
gosh. I say that so often because sometimes I get a glimpse, of like things that I've done and just like these little things. And I'm like, oh man, I'm so glad that I'm not the same person.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know that I would really necessarily trade some of the things just because I choose to believe that even the bad choices that I made
Right.
really have helped me become who I am
Yeah.
today.
Yes.
And so, yeah. And then we had Danielle's story was like, holy cow, was so powerful of, a husband addicted to pornography
Oh, man.
that just took a really bad turn and him ending up in prison.
Right.
And she was pregnant. And that story is, for me, it was like sitting there trying not to like bawl my eyes
Yeah,
out as she's sharing the story and her bravery.
Mhm.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, literally, she really is my hero because being the age she was, never really asking for any of that stuff. And yet she took it and didn't use it as like, she never played a victim,
Mhm.
No.
like never was her story was never about being a victim, but about something that happened and how she took it and the good, bad, and ugly of
Yeah.
getting through that.
Yes. How God takes all those broken pieces and can turn it into something
man.
beautiful.
If you
Yeah.
let him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you let them, because we
Yeah.
can sit in our junk
Mhm.
given to us or
Right.
done to us, or we do it and play the victim and poor me and look at me and try to get everybody sympathy and everybody's empathy and everybody's whatever and never get out of that pit. But she chose to just not be the victim and seek help and never blame and get up and out of that, and to see where she is today is
Yeah.
absolutely
Yeah.
incredible.
Yeah.
It's a beautiful restoration.
It is a beautiful restoration. I mean, if you guys did not listen to that particular episode, I would encourage you
Yeah,
to look it
definitely.
up. Danielle's story is like super powerful.
Mhm.
And another one of my favorites was when we had Taylor, one of my favorite little Taylors, on, and she talked about self-worth, which was so huge for her because one of the things that she struggled with and probably still struggles with at some time is self-worth,
Yeah. The insecurities.
insecurities.
Yeah. Yeah. And she talked a lot about how your value is not in other people and like people pleasing, but
Mhm.
it's just based off what's inside of you and who God says you are.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So like you can tell me who I am and it's probably true because I know you, but ultimately I can't rely on who you believe I am. I have
Yeah.
to rely on who God says I am. I have to be okay with myself at the end of the day.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Believing your own value and your own
Right.
worth
Yeah.
that we each carry something so unique and
Yeah.
valuable to this world that
Mhm.
can't be taken from us.
And that we actually have a relationship with ourselves.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the things that she was really talking about and stressing is the importance of what kind of relationship do you have with yourself,
Hmm.
and quit looking at, trying to have relationships with other people becomes so important, but
Yeah.
you don't think of yourself worthy to have strong
Yeah.
and valid
Yeah.
relationships. And so
Right.
you almost, tear those relationships apart or self-sabotage
Yeah, true.
Yeah.
and relationships. And it's like really, and when you sift it all out, it's really brokenness,
Yeah.
Yeah.
you know?
And she said what you might think you might think like, oh, I'm crazy. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
going crazy. She said it might just be brokenness that you don't have the ability to deal with.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I know Wendy says a lot too. She'll say if you talked out loud to people the way you talk to yourself, what would that sound like?
Yeah.
And it really
Yeah.
does make you think. You're
Yeah.
like, okay, what am I saying to myself? Would
Yeah.
I ever tell somebody
Yeah.
and talk about you guys or talk about them the way I talk to myself? And you're
Yeah.
like, oh, probably not.
Yeah.
Probably not.
Yeah.
That self-talk.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Self-talk
big
is
deal.
so, that's why if we don't have a good relationship with ourselves, our self-talk is not going to be so good.
Yeah.
It's,
Have you ever called yourself stupid?
oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, you're so stupid. What are you dumb?
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah, you never talk to other people like that.
No.
But you talk to
Yeah.
yourself that way.
Well, and even if you're joking,
Yeah.
even if you're like joking about it, your brain literally can't tell the
Yeah.
difference between sarcasm and truth.
Mhm.
So if you're joking like, oh, I'm so stupid,
Right.
but eventually your brain is going to believe that it's
Yep.
stupid.
Sure.
But worse in reverse too. So if you're like, oh, I'm so smart, eventually it's going to believe that it's smart.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so that was a good one. And one of the ones I want to touch on, the last thing we'll just touch on, is the childhood trauma that we did with Wendy. That one really, I remember I had we had a podcast scheduled, an episode scheduled to record with Wendy. And I was trying to, actually it was supposed to be with Becky also, but then Becky actually got sick that day and couldn't be a part of that. So it was just Wendy and I. And I remember sending her a message and I said, Wendy, what is, we're trying to think of a topic, and
Mhm.
I'm like, what? And I sent her a message and I said, what is the one thing right now that you're dealing with patients? What is the one thing that you're talking to women about right now? And she's childhood trauma. And I'm like, that's what we're going to do it on.
Yeah.
And a lot of these we don't really even like study or anything. We just
Right.
like come together and we just start talking about.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
because I think it was just so fresh for her and the things that she was dealing with, we just started talking about it. And it was one of the most listened to episodes.
Yeah, between those 3 episodes, they have like, I want to say like 6,000 or 7,000 listens just on like streams, not including YouTube. There's probably another 1,500 or 2,000 plays on YouTube,
Yeah.
which is insane.
It's insane. It's
Mhm.
just so crazy. And it's like, we talked about like what happens in your childhood affects your adulthood mentally, emotionally, and physically.
Yeah.
Mhm.
We talked about a lot of, in a lot of the episodes, like the insecurities and like the self-talk and all of those things. A lot of those things really are linked to
Yeah.
some kind of trauma in our childhood that we've
Yeah.
never dealt with.
Yeah.
Right.
And I think that that's why this was so important, because it just kind of like a aha moment where you're like, what?
Yeah,
Mhm.
definitely.
And she talked about, you are not your trauma.
Mm-mm.
Your trauma is not your identity.
Yes.
Right.
That is not. And when we realize that, because a lot of women that have had trauma, and a lot of women that listen to this, Sam, because you're our media gal.
So Wendy actually had a TikTok that went viral.
Yeah.
Like millions of views, and some of the comments were just saying, I feel so seen, I feel so heard, I feel so understood. It like literally hundreds of thousands of comments
Yeah.
of people just saying, oh my goodness,
Yeah.
I relate to this. And
Yeah.
so what does that say about childhood
Right.
trauma?
And
Mhm.
some didn't even know that it was
Yes.
childhood trauma.
Yes.
It was just like, what?
Yeah.
That's me.
There's
Yeah.
a comment here that says, I thought it was normal.
Yeah.
And
I
it's-
thought it was normal. Like
Yeah.
living with trauma, especially childhood
Mhm.
trauma, is normal. And then when you
Right.
realize that it's not normal, then you can actually, be able to live out of the depression or oppression or whatever that
Yeah.
thing keeps us in.
Yes.
Yeah.
I would say that was a big thing that I mean, for me, and just things that I've heard from other people too, it's that realization that they didn't even realize
Mhm.
that things might have stemmed from childhood.
Yeah.
I get to I get to counsel with a lot of people, and we try to figure out root causes of things. And I would say 90 to 95% of a lot of root causes end up stemming from their childhood. So it
Yeah.
deals with
Yeah.
a lot of that, number one, that realization, and then going through again back to that forgiveness process. It's like,
Yeah.
okay, like that's what happened, but
Mhm.
that doesn't have to be who I am today.
Exactly.
So it's like,
Right.
how can I now shift that mindset? Now we know it.
Yeah.
We can forgive, we can move on.
Mhm.
So now it's like the how. How do we
Yeah.
move on
Exactly.
from that process?
Yeah. Yeah. And the beautiful thing is guys in 2020, well, this year, we're in 2023 already. Season two, Wendy and I, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be recording a recap. That's not the word I'm looking for.
Like a response.
A response. We're going to be talking about this childhood trauma podcast,
Mhm.
and we're going to go over some of the responses that were sent, the questions and things like that. So if you have any questions, I would encourage you, if you have not listened to that episode, go and find it, the childhood trauma, and then write down any questions that you would have. Go to our website and comment in there, or you can comment on this and we'll get those.
You can comment on Spotify
Thank
on
you.
this one, or I'm going to post some stuff on Instagram, or I'm going to probably post a video on TikTok as well, and you can comment on that as well.
I should always have Sam with me to say those things. Because
And
I
our
always
email
forget.
address is contact@womanofpurpose.net, or just go to womanofpurpose.net, and there's a little contact form, and I'll get it and send you a response.
Perfect. So I'm really excited about the season 2 coming up, because we have new guests coming on, and also some familiar friends that are going to be coming on. And Wendy, we already have, I think, 4 recordings set up with Wendy and I. And then also Brenda Cabola. She's a really cool lady. She's a great friend. She's a psychiatrist. And we've been trying to get her. Last year we tried to book something, and just scheduling didn't work out. But we have her scheduled for February to do a recording, and I'm really excited about having her on, because I think she's going to be able to touch on some things with this whole trauma in a whole nother aspect. And so I'm really excited. So we want to thank you guys for watching season 1 in 2022, and we want to encourage you guys to continue watching this next season 2, right? Season 2. It's going to be really, really good. I'm really excited. So if you have any topics that you wish that we would talk about, also comment and let us know. And we've got some really fun things that we're thinking for 2023. So again, I'm Sharp Pittman, the host of Women of Purpose. Thank you for joining us today, and we're looking forward to seeing you in the next episodes.